Welcome, my dear friends. This is our first class on hypothesis. A hypothesis is an attempt at explanation, a provisional supposition made in order to explain scientifically some fact or phenomenon. Suppose a watch is stolen from your room. You do not know who has stolen it. On inquiry into the matter, you make a supposition that your servant has stolen the watch. This supposition or assumption is called a hypothesis. A hypothesis must be free from all established fallacies. A hypothesis must be free from all established fallacies. A fallacious hypothesis is vitiated by subjective self-contradictions and objective paradoxes. More specifically, a fallacious hypothesis will go either contrary or contradictory to necessary and sufficient conditions of scientific certainty, that is, observation of particular instances such as Einstein's sciences. A fallacious hypothesis will be inconsistent with infallible and unerring mandates, that is, natural constitution or principle of the uniformity of nature and uninterfering natural mechanisms such as Newton's laws. A fallacious hypothesis will go absolutely contradictory to our national education policy, our national curriculum framework, Right to Education Act, International Convention on the Rights of the Child, UN Universal Declaration of our Inalienable Human Rights, International Treaties on our Inalienable Human Rights, international humanitarian laws, and scientific temperament mentioned in our Constitution of India. Today, we shall try to communicate a few fallacies or subjective self-contradictions and objective paradoxes which often vitiate scientific hypotheses or framed suppositions regarding causal relation. You will study several fallacies which often vitiate scientific inquiry in Unit 2, Grounds of Induction under. Let us try to understand a few fallacies or subjective self-contradictions and objective paradoxes. Let us start with the fallacy of petitio principii, or arguing in a circle, or hen and egg game. The so-called Sun is the sister planet Venus. Sister planet Venus, or the so-called Sun, is the manifested sign of natural magnetism and scientific proof of natural magnetic directions, natural north and natural south directions. The so-called Sun or sister planet Venus enters from the North Pole or natural magnetic field or aphelion or E point, and it sets in the South Pole or natural weak field or perihelion or T point for the Eastern Daylight Time Zone, that is North America and South America. Entering direction of the so-called sun for North America and South America of the Eastern Daylight Time Zone represents natural north direction, that is natural magnetic field or North Pole or aphelion or E point. Setting direction of the so-called sun for North America and South America of the Eastern Daylight Time Zone represents natural south direction or weak field or South Pole or perihelion or T point. So, in North America and South America, the so-called sun enters from natural north and sets in natural south. This is the top semi-anticlockwise journey or Bulgar fraction 1/2 journey of the so-called sun or sister planet Venus before the prime meridian for the ground stair, that is Kepler's minor axis of North America and South America of the East zone. This top semi-anticlockwise journey of the so-called sun from natural north, that is magnetic field, to natural south, that is natural weak field, is called morning show of the sister planet Venus. This top semi-anticlockwise journey of the so-called sun from natural north, that is natural magnetic field, to natural south, that is natural weak field, is called morning show of the sister planet Venus. Einstein has recognized the morning show of the sister planet Venus from magnetic field to weak field, that is natural north to natural south, or E point to T point, or aphelion to perihelion, as electromagnetic force. Electromagnetic force. The so-called sun or sister planet Venus turns back from the setting point, that is weak field or South Pole or T point or perihelion, due to equal and opposite natural framework or Newton's third law, equal and opposite, and natural magnetism or broken bar of global scientists. It rises from the South Pole, that is natural weak field or perihelion or T point, and it ends in the North Pole, that is natural magnetic field or aphelion or E point for the Western Daylight Time Zone. Rising direction of the so-called sun for the Western Daylight Time Zone of Africa, Asia, Australia, Arabian Peninsula and Europe represents natural south direction, that is natural weak field or South Pole or perihelion or T-point. Ending direction of the so-called sun for the Western Daylight Time Zone of Africa, Asia, Australia, Arabian Peninsula and Europe represents natural north direction, that is natural magnetic field or north pole or aphelion or E-point. This is the top semi-clockwise journey of the so-called sun behind the prime meridian for the Western Daylight Time Zone of Africa, Asia, Australia, Arabian Peninsula and Europe. This top semi-clockwise journey of the so-called sun includes Bulgar fraction 3/4 for the middle star or Kepler's semi-major axis of Africa, Asia, Australia and Europe, and Bulgar fraction 1/4 for the mountaintop star or Kepler's major axis of Arabian Peninsula. This top semi-clockwise journey of the so-called sun behind the prime meridian from natural south or natural weak field to natural north or natural magnetic field is called evening show of the sister planet Venus. Einstein has recognized the evening show of the sister planet Venus as electro-weak force. So, the so-called sun or sister planet Venus rises twice, that is, enters from natural magnetic field for the Eastern Daylight Time Zone and rises from natural weak field for the Western Daylight Time Zone and sets twice, that is, sets in the natural weak field for the Eastern Daylight Time Zone and ends in the natural magnetic field for the Western Daylight Time Zone within 24 hours. Alteration of day and night in a day is the scientific proof of the equal and opposite morning show and evening show of the sister planet Venus, or Einstein's electromagnetic force and electroweak force, or twice rising and twice setting of the so-called sun in a day. These are nothing but infallible and unerring statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day. There is a screen or a barrier between equal and opposite morning show and evening show of the sister planet Venus, or equal and opposite stages of journey of the so-called sun, or Einstein's electromagnetic force and electroweak force. This barrier or screen is called solar system or Lakshman Rekha or electron cloud or sunspots or ether. Einstein has recognized equal and opposite stages of journey of the so-called sun as electromagnetic wave. He has recognized the solar system or the screen between equal and opposite natural mechanism as gravitational wave. Global scientists have recognized electromagnetic wave, that is equal and opposite morning show and evening show of the so-called sun, and solar system, that is the screen between equal and opposite natural mechanism, as Einstein's binary pulsar. Einstein's binary pulsar. We cannot perceive the presence of the daylight or so-called sun or sister planet Venus at a time in the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone due to solar system or screen or barrier or electron cloud or Lakshman Rekha or gravitational wave. Between zone of Ravana or Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Ramrajya or Western Daylight Time Zone. Man-made Constitution, UN Universal Declaration, universal acceptance of the global scientific community, unanimous agreement of both national and international leaders, inventions of finite rational beings, uncountable global science books and global science journals, innumerable research works for the sake of global sustainability, well-established scientific theories, comments of the eminent experts of scientific certainty, assessment and accreditation of higher level quality education, evaluation and celebration of lower level ensured quality education, Mon Ki Baat or opinions of competent authorities, and universal denial of eminent persons do not have any authority over infallible and unerring statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day, that is twice rising and twice setting of the so-called sun, or morning show and evening show of the sister planet Venus, or Einstein's electromagnetic force and electroweak force, or Einstein's binary pulsar, or natural constitution and uninterfering natural mechanism, or principle of the uniformity of nature and law of causation. It is our inborn human rights to communicate infallible and unerring statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day. Moreover, UN Universal Declaration of our inalienable human rights has provided us formal and legitimate right for communicating infallible and unerring statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day, that is twice rising and twice setting of the so-called sun from E point to T point and turning back from T point to E point, or morning show and evening show of the sister planet Venus, or Einstein's electromagnetic force and electroweak force, or Einstein's binary pulsar, or natural constitution and uninterfering natural mechanism, or principle of the uniformity of nature and law of causation. An authority or organization does not have any legitimate right to violate our inalienable human rights, projecting anti-natural framework and communicating post hoc ergo propter hoc statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day, that is fallacious hypotheses or subjective self-contradictions and objective paradoxes. However, it is being taught without broken bar that the so-called Sun or sister planet Venus is the manifested sign of solar system, that is Einstein's gravitational wave or Lakshman Rekha between equal and opposite natural mechanism, and scientific proof of east and west directions going absolutely contradictory to both material ground or observation of particular instances such as alteration of day and night in a day, and formal ground or natural constitution or uninterfering natural mechanism and principle of the uniformity of nature or Newton's laws, as well as consciously and intentionally violating our inborn human rights and UN Universal Declaration of our inalienable human rights. Consequently, we know nothing about verifiable framework of this manifested nature, four basic fields, four basic forces, four cardinal directions, and infallible and unerring statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone within the east horizon, that is gravitational field of the upright rectangular universe, after having known much about anti-natural framework of natural science and post hoc ergo propter hoc statistics regarding alteration of day and night in a day. It is being taught that the so-called Sun or sister planet Venus rises once from the east and sets once in the west to cause the alteration of day and night in a day. It is also being taught that we are to recognize east and west directions in correspondence to one's rising and one's setting sun. So it is being taught that the so-called Sun rises and sets, that is, moves. However, it is also being taught that the immovable hexagonal world or planet Pluto, appearing as a pentagonal earth like 9/11 pentagon with three ascending stairs, that is Kepler's minor axis, semi-major axis, major axis, also moves round the rising and setting sun. These teachings are vitiated by all established fallacies, specifically petitio principii or arguing in a circle, petitio principii or arguing in a circle. These fallacious scientific teachings resemble the hen and egg game. For example, every hen comes out of the egg. Every egg comes out of the hen. Therefore, every egg comes out of the egg. These anti-natural and anti-human, anti-social and anti-religious, self-contradictory and paradoxical, vague and absurd, indefinite and inconsistent, fallacious and hypocritical, unscientific and non-philosophical, illogical and immoral, illicit and illegitimate, unlawful and unconstitutional teachings are objectively present in uncountable global science books and global science journals. We are to remember that a hypothesis or a scientific supposition regarding causal relation must be free from petitio principii or arguing in a circle or hen and egg game. Now let us try to understand the fallacy of non-observation. Fallacy of non-observation. Observation of particular instances is the necessary and sufficient condition or the material ground of scientific hypothesis. If it is asked, have you ever perceived 9 moving and running global planets, 9 moving and running global planets within the sole equal and opposite manifested nature? Have you ever perceived 9 moving and running global planets within the sole equal and opposite manifested nature? Then the definite answer of the pupil of this equal and opposite manifested nature will be nothing save no. So, projected and communicated 9 moving and running global planets within the sole equal and opposite manifested nature are vitiated by the fallacy of non-observation. Fallacy of non-observation. Let us try to understand the fallacy of malobservation. Fallacy of malobservation. Each day we perceive alteration of day and night or morning show and evening show of the sister planet Venus or the so-called Sun for the equal and opposite east zone and west zone. We have not yet perceived common run of the so-called Sun. We have not yet perceived common run of the so-called Sun for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone within the east horizon or Sirius A of the upright rectangular universe. Moreover, there is a barrier between equal and opposite natural mechanism called solar system or gravitational wave. So, Copernican hypothesis or Copernican revolution regarding rotation of the immovable hexagonal world or planet Pluto and revolution of the appearing pentagonal earth like 9/11 pentagon with 3 ascending stairs or superscripts is vitiated by the fallacy of malobservation. Fallacy of malobservation. Let us try to understand the fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc. Fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc. Each day, the so-called Sun or sister planet Venus as the manifested sign of natural magnetism and scientific proof of natural magnetic directions rises twice and sets twice from North Pole to South Pole and turning back from South Pole to North Pole to cause the alteration of day and night for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone. Moreover, there is a barrier called solar system or gravitational wave or electron cloud between equal and opposite natural mechanism. Further, we have not yet perceived common run of the so-called sun for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone. So, the hypothesis that the so-called sun rises once from the east and sets once in the west to cause the alteration of day and night in a day, that is twice day and twice night within 24 hours. For the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone within the east horizon of the upright rectangular universe is vitiated by the fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc statistics. Let us try to understand the fallacy of plurality of causes. Fallacy of plurality of causes. Principle of the uniformity of nature states that nature behaves same under similar circumstances, and the law of causation states that the same cause always produces the same effect. If we frame a hypothesis that several causes acting independently produce the same effect at different times, then our hypothesis will be vitiated by the fallacy of plurality of causes. Fallacy of plurality of causes. Plurality of causes is scientifically untenable or indefensible. Copernican revolution is contradictory to Newton's third law, equivalent opposite. Two contradictories or rival hypotheses cannot be true together or false together from the points of view of four fundamental categories of knowledge, such as space, time, substance, and causality. However, Copernican universal malobservation and Newton's third law are objectively present within the domain of natural science and uncountable science books and science journals. So, projected and communicated natural science is vitiated by the fallacy of plurality of causes. Fallacy of plurality of causes. Similarly, Newton's visual binaries, that is two moons or periodic motion of the planet Uranus of each zone, and Neil Armstrong's visited moon or NASA's moon are objectively present within the domain of astronomy. So, projected and communicated astronomy is vitiated by the fallacy of plurality of causes. Let us try to understand the fallacy of characteristic imperfection. There is soul, equal and opposite, manifested nature. This equal and opposite manifested nature was revealed. Revealed means created and manifested prior to the revelation, that is creation and manifestation of finite rational beings. Equal and opposite is the a priori framework of natural science. Equal and opposite is the a priori framework of natural science. Man-made constitution and inventions of finite rational beings do not have any authority over equal and opposite a priori framework of this manifested nature. So, projected and communicated global framework of this equal and opposite manifested nature is vitiated by the fallacy of characteristic imperfection. Let us try to understand the fallacy of practical imperfection. Manifested universe is not a solar system or gravitational wave. Manifested universe is not a solar system or gravitational wave. Manifested universe is a serious binary system or binary star system. Manifested universe is a serious binary system or binary star system. East horizon or gravitational field of the serious binary system is the substratum of physical things and physical beings. East horizon or gravitational field of the Sirius binary system is called Sirius A. An apple falls from the tree towards gravitational field or east horizon or Sirius A of the Sirius binary system. Dead land is the manifested sign of east horizon or gravitational field or Sirius A of the Sirius binary system. West horizon or strong field is the substratum of astronomy and astrophysics. West horizon or strong field of the Sirius binary system is called white dwarf companion Sirius B. White dwarf companion Sirius B. Rain comes from west horizon or strong field or white dwarf companion Sirius B of the Sirius binary system. Stars like diamonds appear at night in the west horizon or strong field or white dwarf companion Sirius B or the substratum of astronomy and astrophysics. Now, if Chandrayaan is a verifiable science, if Chandrayaan is a verifiable science, then there will be no difference between astronomy and physics. There will be no difference between astronomy and physics. If there is a difference between astronomy and physics. If there is a difference between astronomy and physics, then Chandrayaan is practically an impossible task. Chandrayaan is practically an impossible task. As there is a difference between astronomy and physics, so projected Chandrayaan is vitiated by the fallacy of practical imperfection. Let us try to understand the fallacy of excluded middle. Each day we perceive alteration of day and night for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone. Projected common run of the so-called sun, or projected common run of Neil Armstrong's visited Soul Moon, or NASA's moon for the equal and opposite Eastern Daylight Time Zone and Western Daylight Time Zone is vitiated by the fallacy of excluded middle. See, let us try to understand the existential fallacy. A non-existent thing such as space station of an anti-natural scientific community cannot be made into existence even by the global scientists of this equal and opposite manifested nature. So, projected and communicated space station is vitiated by the existential fallacy. Aim of scientific inquiry is to establish a verifiable and justifiable causal relation Verifiability depends on observation of particular instances, that is, material ground. Verifiable truth is called material truth. Correspondence to reality verifies the framed hypothesis or scientific inquiry. Justifiability relies on natural constitution. Justifiability relies on natural constitution, that is, formal ground. Justifiable truth is called formal truth. Consistency with unalterable laws of nature, such as Newton's laws, justifies the framed hypothesis or scientific inquiry. Generalization of verifiable and justifiable truth or material and formal truth is the aim of induction. So, a hypothesis or a framed supposition regarding causal relation must be free from all established fallacies, that is, subjective self-contradictions and objective paradoxes.